You'll be as pleased as I am that as we move through March, the days are getting longer and we're starting to see a bit of spring coming through and some warmer days. And with that, it's fantastic, isn't it, to be able to get outside a little bit more and to enjoy the open air. But it's really important that as we do that, that we also keep in mind all of the measures that are in place in this very first step of the roadmap. It allows for us to meet up with one other person for recreational activities outdoors. But it's really important that even as we do that, we keep in mind all of the social distancing measures, which are so important. The reason they're important is that there is no shortcut we can take to the end of the roadmap. There is still quite a long way to travel, and during that time, we need to make sure that the rates in Nottinghamshire come down further. You can play your part in that by sticking to the rules at each step of the roadmap.
And we're live, thank you.
Okay, can I minute for agenda item 1, which is the minutes of the last meeting held on the 1st of February 2021. Can I take those as a true record? Yep, everybody happy. Sarah, do you want to do your preamble now?
I will do, thank you, Chairman. So in addition to Councillor Lawton as Chairman today, we also have the following members present. Councillors Nikki Brooks, Councillor Richard Butler, who is substituting for John Handley, Councillor Steve Carr, Councillor Kate Fole, Councillor Errol Henry, Councillor Phil Rostance, Councillor Andy Sissons, Councillor Keith Walker and Councillor Martin Wright. And in terms of officers, as well as myself, we also have Service Director Marjorie Toward, Service Director Nigel Stevenson, Service Director Ainsley McDonnell, Group Manager Heather Dickinson, Group Manager Rob Disney, Senior Accountant Glenn Bicknell, Team Manager Joe Kirkby, Solicitor Emma Hunt and Advanced Democratic Services Officer Joe Toomey. And we also have John Gregory from the Council's External Auditors, Grant Thornton. In terms of apologies, we've received 2 apologies today. We have apologies from Councillor Rachel Madden, who has a medical appointment, and Councillor John Handley for other reasons, and we have Councillor Richard Butler substituting for him today. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much. Apologies to absence. Have we got any, Sarah?
As I've just given.
Yeah, sorry, I apologise. Yeah, I'll apologise. There you go. Right, okay, well, you've done them into that. Right, declarations of interest by members and officers. Are there any? No. Okay, so we've altered the agenda slightly, guys. It's to allow our 151 officer to go and get his teeth seen to. So we'll go straight on to agenda item 10, which is the local authority financial reporting and external audit government response to the independent review.
Good morning. Yeah, good morning, everyone, and thank you very much, Chairman. So this is the government's response to the Redmond Review. I brought a paper back in October in terms of the output from the Redmond Review, and the government published its response just before Christmas. I wasn't going to spend a lot of time in terms of, because the paper is what the paper is. The government summarised the response in terms of 5 items. In the first item, it's basically to increase the prices for external audit. The second item around system leadership options, no changes are proposed. Enhancing the functioning of local audit, the government is minded to allow a report by our external auditors to full council, so I anticipate that there'll be more consultation to come forward. And further work is required on improving transparency and on the additional functioning of local government for smaller bodies. And thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much. John, do you want to add anything? Are you there, John?
I am indeed here. Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I mean, obviously, we as a firm welcome the fact that the government is responding broadly in the right way to the Redmond report, which I think you'd be aware we thought was a good thing. Obviously, we were a little disappointed that the government hasn't yet agreed with Tony Redmond that there is a clear need for a new sort of bespoke regulator to oversee the world of public audit and to move us outside of the remit of the FRC. That is something that we still think would be a very important development, because it would ensure that we in our work can focus on the things that actually matter most within the world of local authorities, rather than being bound by the rules which the Financial Reporting Council apply in the commercial world, which lead us to focus a great deal on things like the valuation of land and buildings and things like that, which don't, with the exception of investment properties, which don't actually have that much of an impact in your world. So we're very much still watching that particular space, but yeah, overall we welcome the government's response.
Any comments from members? Kate?
just one just one quick question. I was a bit surprised to see that about the comment in paragraph 3 about the transparency of local authority financial reporting. So are you arguing then, John, that that's because there isn't a separate body that actually audits the things that matter, or things that are actually central to kind of local authority reporting? I just wonder what that's about, because it feels quite often that actually, you know, we are scrutinised a lot, which is good. But I just wonder why that was in there. And the other thing I was a bit puzzled about was that over the page, it's on line 138. It's a paragraph. It's what is it? I think it's 9C. Enhancing the functioning of local audit. It says that the auditor be required to present an annual audit report to full council meeting. Now that goes to policy at the moment, doesn't it? I just wonder what's behind that as well. Just, I think I'm just not understanding, but it'd be helpful just for a bit more explanation of that.
Yeah, well, I mean, shall I give you my thought? I don't know whether Nigel wants to chip in with any thoughts, but I'll certainly give.
I can do afterwards if
yeah, okay.
I want to add. Thanks, John.
So in terms of your last point, first of all, around the annual report going to full council, I think there is just general desire to make audit, and particularly the auditor's views on financial sustainability, more visible to all council members. This is obviously in the wake initially of the Northamptonshire scenario, and now of course we have the likes of Croydon. We have some other authorities not a million miles up the road from yourselves who are in quite a financially challenged position as well, and it's basically about making sure that all members know exactly what the auditor thinks about that. In relation to the transparency point, in my eyes, it's a completely separate point to the point I was making about regulation and the role of the FRC. This is actually about the format of local authority accounts. And which is very much driven by CIPFA, which obviously is a public sector specific organisation. So I think it's more a recommendation that is directed at CIPFA to do what it has been talking about doing for a good number of years, and actually simplify the format of local authority accounts. Or there is also talk within the Redmond stuff about actually producing a suitable sort of short summary. Local government accounting is just horribly complicated because of the way it has kind of shoehorned the way local government finance works into a sort of more commercial set of financial reporting standards. So that's what that's about. It's actually about producing sets of accounts that mean something to yourselves as those charged with governance, and more importantly to the people out there who actually want to know where their council tax is going.
Thank you very much. Before the 151 officer kicks in, you don't want to hear my views, do you, Nigel?
Well, I think you'll probably find I'll share them, Chairman.
Go for it.
Oh, I've got my hand up, Chair.
Sorry, I didn't realise. Apologise. Who was that? I missed one.
Steve.
Hi, Steve. Go for it.
Yeah, I actually support the reports going to full council, very, very much so. From the perspective of our council, both myself and Councillor Dobson aren't on the policy committee, so you know we don't have that input there. But obviously, our council is very different to, say, Liverpool and Nottingham, which are dominated by one party. And I think, you know, there's the transparency issues by keeping it to committees that are entirely made up of one party, which happens in those authorities, is bad. I mean, some of the things that are coming out of Liverpool, Paul, in particular, how they've been able to keep those under wraps is actually quite frightening. And it does call into question whether scrutiny was taking place in these authorities. So whilst it's going to affect all of us and those of us that do it properly, it's only right that we all do the same thing. So, you know, I do welcome this moving forward, and it's got to be done. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. Before I bring Nigel in, that was one of the reasons that came through, one of the recommendations that came through from the LGA, that the Governance and Ethics Committee gave a annual report to full council to try and alleviate some of those issues, Steve, to ensure that they understood where we were working and what we were doing, so that we can leave it, so we open ourselves up for scrutiny. Nigel.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman, and I agree with the comments that have been made by colleagues, because we have to. There is a danger when the accounts used to go to full council that they were just as complicated, and it was an artificial debate. And to be honest with you, everything that's about scrutiny means I take what you were going to say. I'm sure, Chairman, was about the accounts being too complicated. When I joined local authority years ago, the accounts were probably about 30 or 40 pages long, and since then a lot more statutory requirements for additional notes, as well as John has mentioned, the changes to the accounting standards and the move in 2010 to International Financial Reporting Standards, and it's 115 pages long, which is really difficult for anybody to look at them. Albeit, you have to remember at the side of that came transparency, and so additional information is now published monthly on our website in terms of spend analysis, for instance, so that people can actually see what is being spent, and a lot of data on members' expenses and stuff all appears to be more open and transparent. But taking a report necessarily to full council I wouldn't necessarily believe is the answer, because the Liverpool situation, the auditors didn't see there as being a problem. So that one issue wouldn't have risen, even if they'd taken something to full council. There's something else there. So in all cases, you'll find there's something else that's underneath that, not necessarily because something hasn't happened at the right council meeting. One of the questions I think that you raised, Kate, was around the functioning bit about the governance. I think the problem is with that one is we got rid of the Audit Commission, and bringing anything together under one body is where central government couldn't see them turning back and creating another version of what would look like an Audit Commission. And that was the danger, and that's why they're not doing that one. And that's why we're probably stuck, albeit I think John's right, that it'd probably be better and simpler if we went to one body being responsible, as opposed to the FRC, the National Audit Office, and accounting standards all being their own little side bits around the way accounts are dealt with in the finances of local authorities. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. From the chair, two things really that I think spring out of it, come readily to mind. One is I think we perhaps should look at doing our own set of in inverted commas councillor friendly accounts without creating too much work, but you know, because councillors like pictures, you know, we need pictures in there to be able to understand it. Sorry, that was a bit tongue in cheek. And the second thing is that it may well be worth our while. Marge, I'm pointing at you, talking to you really about this in the future, looking at how we report to both policy and whether we need to report to full council, because it's something we can, you know, we can implement ourselves if necessary. Okay.
We're saying here we'll report to full council, aren't we?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So the recommendation then, if I can get, just bear with me a second.
Page 140.
Is page 140. Everybody happy with that? Yeah. No dissenters. Thank you very much, Nigel. You can get off to your dentist now.
Yeah, thank you very much, Chairman.
Okay, cheers. Have a good time. Right, okay. Agenda item 4, local government and social care ombudsman decisions January to February 21. Joe?
Thank you, Councillor Lawton. So this is the regular report that members have asked for about local government ombudsman's decisions. It's for the period January and February. Appendix A to the report contains just a summary of each case and the outcomes of each case, and Appendix B has got all the full decisions, the decision statements in full there. So in the period we received 9 decisions as a council. After initial inquiries, 5 cases were not proceeded with to full investigation, and the table in Appendix A gives the details for that. Variety of different reasons, and I'm happy to answer questions if anybody has them, but the details are given there. There was a full investigation in 4 cases. No fault was found in relation to one matter, which was the determination of the tax status of a contractor. There was some fault found in relation to the actions of an academy in closing a footpath used by infant school parents. An apology and so on has been offered for that. 2 cases related to adult social care. One was a very complex case in relation, and the complaint concerned the reduction in a care package. Some fault was found in part of the council's dealings with this person, and a financial remedy of £500 has been offered. The final case, which forms the substance of the report really, was a case which went to full public report. That's not a usual occurrence in ombudsman's cases, so it is quite an unusual occurrence. There may be a number of reasons why cases go to full report, and the main one being is because the Ombudsman believes it's in the public interest to highlight a particular issue or concern. I'm going to pass over to Ainsley in a minute, who'll talk about the case in more detail to you. But we've taken a number of actions which we're required to do by the Ombudsman in terms of publicising locally, making the decision available to people if they ask for it. And the Ombudsman will monitor the fact that this has been reported to yourselves as a committee, and they are going to monitor the action plan, which is also part of your papers. Now, I'm happy to answer any questions in terms of the complaints process, but I know that Ainsley McDonnell is here to speak to you about the situation in adults.
I think we'll go straight on to Ainsley, if that's okay, yeah, and then ask questions afterwards. Ainsley, thank you very much for coming. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Chair. So this case is summarised in the report at paragraph 11, but essentially the Ombudsman found that we hadn't acted promptly in assessing the complainant's stepfather's care needs as well as his mental capacity. And that meant that he had to stay at a care home for longer than necessary, which also led to him accruing quite significant care fees to a debt of £15,000. So it was found that we failed to act in his best interests regarding his care and finances, and that we also didn't assess his wife's needs appropriately as a carer. The care provider continued to pursue the wife for the care fees directly, which obviously caused her, a significant amount of distress. We accept that, we did not act as we should have done. And we've accepted all of the Ombudsman's findings and recommendations, and we've pulled together an action plan within the department that we're sort of working through as we speak. The Actions, we have completed a number of the actions. The summary of the action plan is at paragraph 13 of the report. So we have apologised unreservedly to the family, and we've made the payments that the Ombudsman recommended. We've done several briefings with staff, both not just the staff who were involved in this particular case, but actually, there's a lot of lessons learned in terms of, our wider practice and how we actually make sure that, staff understand and apply relevant legislation. We've investigated internally the reasons for the delays in appropriate assessment and why that didn't happen as it should have done, and we've reviewed our mental capacity documentation to make sure that staff fully understand what their practice should be when it comes to mental capacity. And we've reviewed the Departmental Care Act and Mental Capacity Training Programme. So we are working through the action plan. One of the things that I've been involved in quite recently is quite a detailed review of how we do amass information from not just the Ombudsman judgments, but also complaints and sort of other issues that come up, safeguarding, etc., to make sure that we've got a running programme of learning from all of these different incidents. There's I can't apologise enough for the distress that we caused to this family. We don't always get things right, and I think in this case we particularly got it very wrong. So I'm happy to take any questions that the committee might have in relation to this particular situation.
Right, any comments from the committee? I can't see any hands up. Yes, there is. Kate, yeah.
Thanks for that, Ainsley. Clearly, training's key to this, isn't it? It's, and I suppose there are two questions for you. Then one is, how are things now in that situation? How are they all now? And secondly, how do you monitor and evaluate how successful the training's been? That it actually really is embedded across the department and individually.
So just in answer to your points, I think in terms of this particular family, the issues have been resolved. So, we have, worked very hard with the family to make sure that actually their situation is as it should be and should have been right from the beginning. In terms of practice, I mean, we've got principal social worker and principal occupational therapist who are both sort of leads for professional practice in their respective areas. So part of their role is to undertake quality checking, make sure that we've got up-to-date training in place. We have practice newsletters that go out on a very frequent basis to make sure that staff are aware of any changes to legislation, changes to practice that they need to be aware of. And we do check, through individual supervision. There'll be discussions about case issues, how things are going, and also we have senior practitioners in every team who again have got a role in looking at practice to make sure that people are doing what they should be doing. Unfortunately, sometimes just with the sheer volume of work that's going through, things do slip through the net. It's when we do sort of quality checks, we will take sort of a sample of cases. You can't always look at every single case in an in-depth way all of the time. But it's really, we have got practice very much at the forefront, and we're doing quite a lot of work now with the entire department on a programme called Owning and Driving Performance, which is very much about personal accountability and responsibility in terms of, practice, how we deliver services to people, and how we make sure that we're working and operating in the best possible way.
Thank you, Ainsley. If you're not speaking, could you please mute, because there's quite a bit of feedback. I've got Martin down. Martin?
Thank you, Chairman. And Ainsley's almost answered my question, but not quite. We all know that our authority takes its responsibilities very, very, how can I put it, seriously when looking after people and even assessing people. Can Ainsley just highlight why we were delayed in assessing this gentleman? I know everyone would have tried to do it in the right manner and in a timely fashion. And as Ainsley's pointed out, we are a large authority with great responsibility and a lot of people to look after, and things do slip through the net. But I would be interested to know what, in this particular case, why we delayed assessing this gentleman. Thank you, Chairman.
Okay, I don't have that specific detail without going into the case record, but certainly, delays can occur for all kinds of reasons. It may be that, sometimes there's delays because, we may be in conversation with the care provider, and, we may hold the assessment off for a couple of weeks until we've actually looked at what the options are in terms of care packages. Sometimes delays occur just because, trying to line up dates with the family, etc. These things do happen. I think in this particular case, however, there was a failure to act in a timely manner on behalf of the staff member involved, and there was appropriate performance management undertaken in respect of that. And not just, at the level of the sort of individual social worker, but also, we have looked at sort of, leadership and management within that team as well, to make sure that, things do happen in a timely manner. We do have targets that, we should be working within in terms of undertaking assessments, within a reasonable time frame. But, as I say, delays do happen for all manner of reasons, but I think in this case, it was, sort of a practice failure, essentially.
Any other comments? Yes, sorry, Errol. Yeah, Errol.
Yeah, sorry, I've been trying to not press that raise hand thing.
Yeah, no, it's fine. It's just
working.
If I hit my participants list, it throws my cursor off on my computer. Okay. So I'm sort of working sort of semi-blind, but we're managing. Okay, go.
It's come up now. Sorry. Yeah. Ainsley, what I was going to ask about wasn't about the case you speak about, the gentleman. It was about the other case, the one Miss X. I know that we have when we're carrying on an assessment, we have a commitment, a best interest commitment, and we have an agreement to share information. But I wasn't quite sure about why it was improper for the person who was carrying out the assessment to contact the doctor to find out if this person's mental health was an issue. Because in order to carry out a proper assessment, you need to get all the information. So that's my issue there. I'm a bit perplexed around that. So therefore, that could have caused the delay, and it could have caused the assessment to be not properly done, because the information isn't there. And I know that the Care Act does give us a responsibility to to carry out assessments for care needs and support for people. But I don't. You mentioned reasonable, but is the council has a reasonable? What is reasonable in the council's processes for an assessment to be completed? What dates, the times, what timelines are there?
Yeah, well, we used to have a target of 28 days, which was something that, you know, we had to report on that. That's no longer the case. However, we've almost, you know, kind of stayed with that as being seen as reasonable. However, you know, it would be seen as appropriate for an assessment to take longer than that if we're, you know, gathering information. You know, there's trying to pull other professionals into the assessment process, etc. But the important thing to make sure, if you know, if an assessment is going to take a considerable period of time, is that you keep in contact with the individual and their family, and let them know why. And you know, I think sometimes, you know, if that communication is absent, then the reasons for delay aren't known to the individual and family, and that's when it's then perceived to be, you know, an unreasonable delay. I think if you keep that line of communication open and explain to people, you know, yes, it's probably going to take another 2 weeks, but it's because we're waiting for the GP report, or we really want to involve the occupational therapist in this assessment, then that would be seen to be reasonable. It's you know, but when you don't communicate in that way, that's when it's then perceived to be unreasonable, if that makes sense.
Yeah, so that's reason. I was trying to get my head around why they were classed as unreasonable length of time. Yeah. There was another thing I wanted to ask about, actually. But, yeah, when you talked about reason, but it's 28 days, but is it changed now? What to what?
Well, we don't. There isn't a specific sort of length of time. That, as I say, we used to have a 28-day target. We no longer have that same turnaround target that's measured in that way. It's a very broad sort of definition of assessments must be carried out in a timely manner. Now, you know, that's open to interpretation. But as I say, you know, we've tended to work on the basis that we still aim for, you know, sort of the 28 days where possible, or quicker. You know, sometimes and particularly in the case of older adults, you know, we sometimes have to assess extremely quickly, sometimes within 48 to 72 hours, because actually the NHS have targets to meet in terms of discharge. So sometimes, you know, we do need to fall into line of much faster assessments to support hospital discharge targets. So it does vary depending on someone's circumstances. But as I say, you know, it's carrying out an assessment in a timely manner is subjective, but I think that test of reasonableness is about how you actually discuss and communicate that with the individual and the family.
Okay, thank you,
Chair, can I just one clarification, just one more, please?
Yeah.
In terms of the reasonable assessments, and I know earlier when you talked about performance management, how then would you assess staff's performance in terms of assessing, carrying out these reasonable assessments? How then would you measure that if you don't have a specific?
I mean, we do measure the number of assessments and reviews that we carry out each year. So we would expect that where, you know, we have a duty to assess anyone who comes forward who may have social care needs. It doesn't have to be established that they definitely do. We have to offer and undertake that assessment. So we do measure, according to, well, what's the demand been? How many new referrals have we had? How many assessments have we carried out? So we can do that in a numerical data collection, and also our review targets are similar. Everybody who has an assessed social care need should have a review at least annually. So again, there are measures that we use to reflect that. And then when it comes to individual staff performance, that's where managers should be having those discussions through professional supervision, looking at people's caseloads, having those discussions as to how things are progressing to meet someone's outcomes.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm going to push things on because May I just make a comment? Yeah, I'll bring you in, Andy, 1 second, because we've got a reboot at 12 o'clock and it'll kick us all out. So go for it, Andy, please.
Just to comment, Mr. Chairman, as a member of the Adult Social Care and Public Health Committee, I just wanted to reassure the public. Obviously, one failure is one failure too many. As Councillor Martin Wright said, people's rights and their well-being are at the top of the list of priorities with this department. And of all the thousands of cases that are dealt with daily, obviously one mistake is a mistake too many. And there's an overused phrase, lessons have been learnt. But I can reassure the public that lessons have been learnt. And as Ainsley's outlined, retraining and scrutinising what's happening in the departments is at the top of the list. And people can be reassured that they are being looked after and mistakes are recognised and lessons are learned. Thank you. Okay,
thank you. Yeah, Ainsley, thank you very much for coming. We're trying to help, and it's important. It's one of the reasons we scrutinise the Ombudsman reports to see whether there are any trends and any anomalies and any problems. And can I thank you really for your undertaking as far as investigating your complaints is concerned, so that you're looking for possible trends. That's the whole idea of this committee, my main rationale for scrutinising the Ombudsman report. So thank you, Joe, for all your help.
Thank you, Chair.
The recommendations are on page, you find them on page
8, Bruce.
Yeah, okay, can we agree the recommendations, guys? Yeah, okay, we'll move swiftly on then to the Council Induction and Development Programme. Who's doing that, Marge?
Oh, Joe Toomey's doing it, I think.
Hi, Joe. I should have picked up on it was you when you came on screen. Go for it, Joe.
Brilliant, thank you very much. The report before members today asks the committee to approve the indicative councillor induction and development plan for 2021 to 2025 for implementation. The programme, which is attached as Appendix A to the report, was developed by the Member Communication and Engagement Programme Working Group over a series of workshops that were held in the latter part of 2020 and the early part of 2021. The observations that were made by members at the working group meetings are captured within the tables in the report, which also include commentary on how those observations have been reflected in the final programme. Members provided feedback on the format, phasing and frequency of training, including whether they felt training should be mandatory, recommended or optional, but they also made comments on some of the specific training sessions that were proposed, and this has also been captured. To help newly elected councillors understand their own training journeys, we've also produced a matrix which will set out training required for each of the different sorts of roles. The report recognises the need to build flexibility into the training programme to respond to any local or national developments and initiatives, ensuring that members have the appropriate skills and knowledge to carry out their roles successfully. I believe Councillor Sissons will, in the course of debate, be highlighting one such addition that came out of a committee on Monday. So to this end, the committee is also being asked to give authority to the monitoring officer to make any additions to the plan that are considered necessary to ensure the delivery of good governance. The report also provides an update on the post-election IT equipment offer and the development of the Members Hub, including the My Learning portal, through which member training can be accessed and monitored. Hopefully everything else should be fairly self-explanatory, but if you have any questions, happy to answer them. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Sorry, I just went on quiet there. My daughter's just come back from a 10k run. There you go, in the middle of the sunshine, doing mad dogs. Anyway, yes, Andy.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Just take my hand down. Right. Yes, this working group, very much a cross-party group, led by the officers, I've got to say. Tribute to IT, coming up with the Members Hub, the design of it and the training programmes they've put in place, and comments from members across the authority, very constructive and helpful in planning the training. And my thanks go out to the whole working group. The working groups we've had in this committee over the last 4 years have all been excellent, hard work done all round, and everybody's contributed. As Joe Toomey said at the Adult Social Care and Public Health Committee on Monday, one of the items on the agenda was suicide awareness and prevention. Funding has been received for that and training's going into that department. And a suggestion was made that suicide prevention and awareness could be part of the induction training programme under the heading of Adult Social Care and Health. It's there in the programme alongside adult safeguarding, and I'd like to propose that that is indeed added to the training programme, Chairman.
Right, we'll discuss that at the end. Errol?
Yeah, thanks, Jay. Councillor Sissons just sort of covered most of what I was going to say. I was part of the working group, and I must say that it was very, very good cross-party working. And thanks very much to the officers who supported us and guided us all the way through there. One of the things that I was very pleased to see is the refresher training that is in our pack as well, that will be offered to, I know some of us been, not me personally, but some of our members have been here for a while, and sometimes the need to have a refresher training. So that's welcomed. And also to knowing who to contact was a one that we discussed at length, and that was important as well, because new people coming on, there's lots of issues that we pick up in our community, and we don't always know who to contact. So that will be there for us and new members that are coming on to be able to do that. So thank you very much to the officers for helping us to get this together, and hopefully I'll be part of that refresher training after May. So we'll see you then. Okay, thank you.
Steve?
Yes, thanks, Chair. Yes, it was a good working party. Again, totally cross-party, and we're at our best, when we work together. But I normally, as a Liberal, I have problems with mandatory things, but the things that we've actually pulled out as being mandatory, I have to fully agree with. And to be honest with you, I think that some members could do with code of conduct training monthly, but that's another issue. Yeah, so I fully support this. It's a good way forward, and it brings everybody. Everybody has got the same opportunities to do the training, and everybody who has done the mandatory things is absolutely essential. So I support this wholeheartedly. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. Kate?
Just a quick one, just to say thank you for setting this up, and thank you for the working party. Everything I could think of that I thought might have helped me when I was first elected is in there. And as others have said, it's a good idea to have a refresher in there too, and the list of names. So I think it's a really good outcome. So thank you, everybody involved.
Okay, I've got somebody else down. Who have I got? You're going to have to shout out. Yeah, Martin.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, you got me. Yes, just to reiterate what everyone else has said, it was a wonderful experience. To be fair, it was my first experience of a cross-party subgroup, and I couldn't have wished for a better group of people we don't always see eye to eye with politically, but when we come to do something which is for the mutual benefit of all members, we work very well. There was instances of good humour, and everybody bottled down and did what they were there to do. So I thank the officers and I thank the other members for making it a very enjoyable experience. Thank you, Chairman.
There you go, Joe. You can put a big smile on your face. Okay, the suicide issue. Are we quite happy? Yes, Marge, you look as though you're about to say
No, I
something.
was going to say Councillor Butler's got his hand up.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, Richard.
Thank you, Marge. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, I know I'm only really a visitor to your committee here, but I really just wanted to back up the comments that your other members of the committee have made about your working group and the importance of training. For the last 3 or 4 years, I've wearing my other hat here. I've been sort of trying to, or have been convincing and persuading members of my group the importance of training. And sometimes you get some reluctance, but other times you get people who come along to the training and they're actually quite surprised and grateful that they've come along to it. So it's very, very important. And as you and others have said, there will be some new faces in a few weeks' time. The life of the council has to go on, but it also has to be done properly. And there are certain aspects of the authority that can only be done properly once members have had the training. So anything you're doing as a committee and the working group you had to make the training, shall we say, more acceptable or help to convince members that they need to go along is to be welcome. So well done on that. And yes, thank you for letting me speak on this. And also just to back up Councillor Sisson's comments earlier on, which I know you want to come back in on as well. Thank you.
Steve, have you still got your hand up? Or do you...
No, let's talk about the suicide situation. I fully support having the suicide awareness training included in that. I've now been an elected councillor for 18 years in one form or another, and last year I actually had a situation where I had somebody on the phone who was threatening to kill themselves, and to be quite frank, I just didn't know what to do, and it was a Sunday, so I hadn't got any officers to phone, and in the end I phoned for an ambulance, but you know, I was absolutely flummoxed at what to do. So I think you know, it's
we've lost him.
Situation, but we might come across. We're there.
Yeah, go for it. Yeah.
Hello.
Yeah.
Back.
Yeah, I was saying, you know, I think it's absolutely essential that we have this training, because I think we might get this situation increasingly, I'm afraid.
Yeah, I think can we? Nobody's more aware about issues of suicide than me, but can we add that to the programme, please, Marge? I think unanimity, really. We don't need to have a vote on it.
Yeah.
It's a no-brainer. And also from the chair, really, I think the working groups have worked well. I think one of the reasons is I haven't chaired them. But no, but I'm just making the point. They have worked well, and that's to the committee's credit. Okay, so any other comments? No, we're quite happy with that. The recommendations. Everybody happy with the recommendations? I think it's an excellent piece of work, guys. So well done. Yeah, we'll move straight on then to whistleblowing updates. Are you doing that, Marge, or?
No, it's Emma. Emma Hunter's doing it.
I'm not doing very well. I haven't got Emma. Hi, hi there.
Good morning. Thank you, Chairperson. Yes, the purpose of the report is to update committee on whistleblowing activity in 2019-2020, and also to update committee on the review of the whistleblowing policy. If I refer you to paragraph 5 of the report, where there are tables contained, it shows that there was one actual report under the whistleblowing policy in 2019 and 2 in 2020. As per paragraph 5, I can't speak in any substantive way about the individual cases because I could inadvertently reveal who the whistleblower was, but you can see that those are the instances of whistleblowing referrals having been made over that 2-year period. Now, those reporting levels might appear quite low, and at the moment it's not actually that clear why they are at that level. It could simply be, of course, that there have only been 3 concerns that gave rise to that sort of a referral being made.
It could, of course, be that staff don't have the correct awareness at this present time to know to follow a whistleblowing policy should they have any concerns. Or it could, of course, be that the concerns are being raised in different forums, such as reporting matters to line managers, etc., within the auditing process, for example. And that is one of the purposes of the review of the policy, really, to ensure that it is robust and that staff members have got the knowledge to know how and when to report whistleblowing concerns. The proposal is to carry out a full review of the current policy, and that's to consider making sure that it's clear what is and what is not whistleblowing. So, for example, a grievance against a fellow member of staff, for example, should be raised under different procedures with line managers, etc., rather than a whistleblowing referral as such. We need to ensure that the wording of the document set out the arrangements in a way that is clear and understandable to all of the employees. We want to carry out a comparison exercise with other councils to ensure that we are providing similar advice to employees to sort of quality assure what we're doing, as it were. And we want to look at how the referrals are logged and then tracked through to their conclusion to make sure that we've got an accurate record of all whistleblowing referrals that are made. We want to carry out additional training for the relevant officers and the wider workforce and promote awareness raising activities for staff and employees. And this will, of course, involve all the key service areas. Really, the aim of the review is to ensure that Nottinghamshire County Council meets its obligations, that these protected disclosures are made appropriately, and that we can review the results of them in a clear and effective manner. I hope that provides you with enough information, but I'm more than happy to answer any questions you might have.
Comments, questions? I've got one hand. Oh, it's you, Kate. Yeah, go for it. And then I've got Steve.
Lovely. Thank you very much for bringing this. I think we might have asked for it. So it's really helpful, and it's a good report. Thank you. I think in terms of the review, that's really good, because clearly, I know, I mean, you said there could have only been 3 concerns. Well, that's not likely to be the case, is it? And I do take the point that concerns might have been raised through other procedures, through other policies and procedures. But I think really to suggest that this is the full extent of concern is clearly is a concern. The other thing that I wanted to raise under the review, because what the review isn't considering, although I suspect it's probably tacit in there, is whether or not the organisational culture is actually open to this. Because if you talk about whistleblowing to people generally, and actually I've got a couple of friends who've actually done it, and their careers just ended. They just finished them off for all kinds of reasons. There's a while back now, and I'm not suggesting that is happening now, but it would be nice to have a reassurance to make sure that actually people felt no, as you say, raising awareness is a really good way of doing it. But not only raising awareness, but actually making it clear to people it's safe, there's safety and openness for them to do it. That actually the management and the kind of organisational culture allows them to do that safely. But apart from that, I think it's really good, and I think the response is very robust. So thank you for the review, and I certainly support the recommendations. Thank you.
Emerald, allow everybody to ask questions and then bring you in at the end. Steve?
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. This is very, very timely again, this report. And in view of, I don't know whether members are aware, I'm afraid it's Liverpool again, where 11 whistleblowers have been identified and threatened. And it brings the question, how robust is our system of not being able to identify whistleblowers? And if they are identified, what consequences are there for members of staff that do it, and what consequences are there for if they do get information, carry out threats against these members of staff? I know it's possibly something that probably hasn't happened in the county, but I think we need to be prepared for it if we want the sort of environment, as Kate talked about, where people feel that they're safe to do it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Emma?
Yeah, well, the whistleblowing procedures derived from the Public Interest Disclosure Act 1998 that provides specific protection for people who raise concerns under whistleblowing procedures, and it should be made very clear that anybody that does so in good faith should not be subjected to any kind of harassment or bullying or having their employment terminated, etc. And that's why the whistleblowing policy needs to be robust, and it needs to communicate to staff that those protections are there for them and that they will be protected in that way. There should be a degree of confidentiality around whistleblowing referrals. Now, I don't want to become too bogged down in, a case that might result in people having to give witness statements, etc. But there are protections for people should they wish to remain anonymous. But again, the review of the policy will look at that, and we're going to be looking at putting some very, very clear wording together to reassure staff that should they make such a referral, that they are afforded the protection under the policy.
Marge?
Thank you, Emma.
So I suppose I was going to just pick up on some of the broader points that both Councillor Carr were either implicit or explicit in what Councillor Carr or Councillor Foll raised. So, and I think taking that last point that Emma made, going on to the bit about the culture of the organisation, because that's also, as well as having a policy which needs to reflect your culture and your values, then you need to have that needs to be throughout the organisation, doesn't it? So we're doing a whole piece on the culture of the organisation as part of the new council plan and bringing in the new administration. So that would be to reinforce some of those values and to, affirm things like safety and trust and honesty and integrity and respect. So that's a piece of work that's ongoing, and I think that is. I absolutely agree with Councillor Foll. I think that's inherent in a whistleblowing process, isn't it? Because it's having a culture where you feel, because I have to speak personally here, but somebody saying it's in a policy, I would trust more in the culture to protect me than necessarily just a policy. I think that's really important. I think the other point I'd just make quickly, because I know we're up against it time-wise, is just to reiterate that point about people raise issues with their managers, with us in HR, with the health and safety team. They make complaints. They've raised things through formal employment procedures, disciplines, grievances, harassment. They escalate things to the chief executive or the monitoring officer. This is just the very tip of the iceberg, the things that meet the formal legal definition of whistleblowing, which attributes a protected disclosure. So one of the things I think it would be helpful for you would be to have a flavour of some of that other stuff that's going on, because there's lots of that other stuff, and it's how we would capture that and set this in that context. I think that would improve the reporting.
Yeah, or through their counsellor.
Yeah, absolutely. Whole host of ways. Yeah,
numerous occasions where officers have contacted me over issues where they feel the authority is failing. And would I mind doing something about it? And on many occasions, I've taken it up and dealt with it. Yeah. Heather, do you want to say anything? Do you want to add? I can see you nodding your head.
Yeah, I think the only thing I would add is that although I absolutely understand what Councillor Foll's saying about it seems unlikely this is the number of genuine concerns there are, and on one level I would absolutely agree with that. On another level, it could speak to a very positive culture within the authority, whereby people do feel able, rather than resorting to very formal protective measures like these, they do feel able to raise an issue through other channels and feel that it's likely to be properly addressed without having to take this type of course of action. So, it's difficult, as Emma said, to know exactly what the reasons are. But, there is one way of looking at it. It could mean we have a positive, open and supportive culture across the piece.
I mean, Emma, all you need to do is put a questionnaire out saying, would you have whistleblown in the past? Did you whistleblow in the past? And why didn't you whistleblow in the past? And then you'll find out straight away whether you've got an issue, won't you?
Yeah, definitely. That would be very helpful.
you know, and then the people will tell you, because then they're anonymous anyway, or it doesn't matter if they're anonymous or not. If you're going to whistle blow and you let people know, then that's it. But no, I mean, from my point of view, you do need to appraise it. It is low in benchmarking it with other authorities. You just need to make sure you do the relevant checks and balances to make sure there's not an issue. Really, that's where we're at from the committee. Okay, thank you very much for the paper, Emma. Recommendations then.
Page 4.
Page 76. Am I happy with those, committee? Yeah. Okay. No worries at all. Internal audit, Rob. I'm pushing things on because we've got 25 minutes.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, this first one is a regular one from me, reporting on outcomes from work in the term just gone from internal audit, and then looking ahead to the term that's to come. So in terms of the report on what work has been carried out, this relates to term 2 of 2020-21, and the work in that term centred on assurance around the council's core processes largely. So through the assurance mapping work, particularly financial resilience audit that we did, and developing an approach to continuous assurance. But we complemented that with more responsive and agile inputs to the frontline services particularly. So this was input specifically to the new and changing processes that the council was continuing to make in that term as it responded to the pandemic. Happy to report there were no limited assurance opinions that came through from that work. Most of them, as you can see, I think fell into the reasonable category. I think that probably does reflect those lots of those inputs at that advisory stage, really, around systems changing and processes changing. Probably mindful that we needed to reserve final judgment on those to when we were able to go back and test those new controls and procedures in practice. Much of that sort of work, that return work, is currently underway in the present terms plan. But I think you can see in that table early outputs from that. There were 2 entries in there for the food and essentials grant monies. So it was given a reasonable rating at the stage where we were assessing the proposed controls, but then when we returned to it, we upgraded that to substantial when we could see that those controls were actually working in practice. Won't say anything about counter fraud because we had the dedicated report on that in January. Performance, I think, was generally strong from the audit team in term 2. I think we really saw the benefit of the new structure bedding in there. We had really positive contributions as well from temporary trainee resources into the team in that term, and that was really productive and cost effective, I think, for the team. So that's a model that we want to retain and continue with in the new financial year. An important part of the report this time, though, does pick up on guidance from CIPFA, which I wanted to just say a word about. So this was guidance to heads of internal audit on their year-end opinions in 2021. And this was very much reflecting awareness that quite a few of my counterparts at different councils have struggled to carry on with their usual approach to audit during the circumstances of the pandemic. A variety of factors have influenced other sections. So CIPFA did issue this guidance to heads of audit to assess whether we thought there would be a need to issue a limitation of scope in your year-end opinion as a head of audit. So I've carried out an assessment, self-assessment against that guidance, and I don't feel that I will be in the position of needing to issue a limitation of scope. And I just wanted to highlight 2 key reasons really why I think that's the case. So firstly, I think we can take the benefit really of the committee having developed its wider assurance framework over the last 2 to 3 years of working on this, so that now the assurance provided directly from internal audit's work, it's just one element really of that a range of assurance sources that we can draw upon, and that's reflected in the chart 3 on page 4 of the report. So it is just one element that we can draw on from all of the 3 lines of defence that we've hopefully become more accustomed to. And then secondly, internal audit has actually been able to carry on with its work through the pandemic. So we were adapting our termly plans to meet the rapidly changing assurance requirements of the council over the past year. So I will actually have a good body of evidence available to me from the direct work of internal audit. So that's the position that I think, thankfully, I will be in. I also had a look in the guidance. There were recommendations around steps that audit sections could take through to the end of the current year to try and mitigate the possibility of a limitation of scope. So the table on page 5 and into page 6 of this report just assesses how we match up against those, and I think it's really positive that we've already got in place some of the steps that are recommended by CIPFA, so particularly around assurance mapping, as we've mentioned. The shorter term plans as well was one thing that we've already done, and we're active in one of the other key ones, which was around having an approach to agile audit. And that's very, very topical for us at the moment, and brings us into the term 1 plan then, which is the the final part of this report, because it's very much part of the agile audit approach that we're thinking of at the moment, that we think about how we do plan for what it is that we want to do in the next term. And our current priority assessment approach has been around for quite a long time now, and I think there's growing evidence that it needs a revamp. I think it could be a bit more forward focused, really, in terms of making sure that the team delivers really the right assurance on the right things and at the right time, so it's the most impact for the council. So we're moving to what we're calling a bit more of an intelligence-based approach to planning, and try to set that out on page 7 in the diagram there, trying to complement it though with the strengths of the current approach which we've got, which has served us well, but just trying to build in a little bit more intelligence to really what's going to be most benefit for audit to look at in the term ahead. So as a result of that, the Appendix 2 sets out the detailed proposal for the plan, indicating what's in there and the rationale for why they're in there. And the detailed scopes for a lot of that work will be worked up at the time that we actually get going and make a start on those audits. Consulted with CLT and received positive feedback from colleagues there. So I'll stop there, Chairman. Thank you, and happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much. Sorry about the background noise. We're knocking on the door. Right, comments, questions? I've got one hand up. Yes, Kate, sorry, yeah.
First, just to say thanks to Rob. I think the work he's doing on an audit has been really good and really creative. As you probably gathered, I'm a convert, so thank you. But I think it's really good, and to some extent creative, innovative stuff, which I didn't think words would come out of my mouth like that around audit, but I think it's true. So thank you. Just a couple of things that I was really, just a comment really. A couple of things I was really pleased to see in the plan. And this is on page 89 in my thing. So looking at the county council elections, I am really, really concerned about people's safety when they go into the polling station. You know, you've got the potential there for loads and loads and loads of infections, centres of infection, haven't you? So I think having that on there as a risk is really helpful, and I think it's absolutely wise. So thank you for that. And the health and safety of home working too, because that gets raised in almost every committee I sit on, and when I'm talking to folk out there, it's really important that actually, if we're going to do more home working, and there are real benefits to that, we know that actually people do it in a safe, comfortable environment that's going to kind of suit them kind of in every way. So that was just it. So thank you. So thank you again, Rob. Thanks. And I know there's more reporting to come up. But
any other comments?
Thank you at the beginning.
Okay. Yeah. Any other comments? No, I can't see any. But from my point of view, Rob, Chairman, thank you very much. You need to liaise with the 151 officer when you come to want to write the statement of accounts, because your papers, you've worked out that, as I say, councillors like pictures and colour and to be able to understand. Steve mentioned it at the beginning of the meeting. You know, it makes it easier to understand for us and to be able to disseminate and work out the areas that we need to cross-examine. So thank you very much. So recommendations on page 9. Everybody quite happy with that? Yeah, good. We'll go straight on to follow-up then. It's you again, isn't it?
It is, thank you, Chairman. Yeah, that's my latest 6-monthly update from audit, following the usual process and format with this. Looking at the priority 1 actions, the pie chart set out the position for actions agreed from 1819 and 1920 audits. But again, I just stress that the appendix sets out the latest status for all of the priority 1 actions that we are currently tracking, regardless of the year that they were raised. So essentially, they remain on that appendix until such time as we've confirmed that they've been implemented. So you see from those pie charts that I think progress has been made. Around half, I think, of the actions have been signed off as either implemented, or we've had that positive confirmation from management as the first stage that that the actions have been put in place. But we do see quite a slice of red in the charts for both years, undoubtedly. And I think there is no doubt that the ongoing response to COVID is impacting on services' capacity to take the agreed actions in a number of cases. What we've tried to do, though, in this report, in this latest update, is in the table on page 4, we've had a look at those outstanding priority 1 actions from the appendix and just really tried to assess which of those we think should still be seen as a priority for implementation. So those are the ones that we pulled out in the table, and these are the ones that we think are particularly relevant maybe to the current COVID efforts, that you know, they could actually help with what the council's trying to do at the moment in terms of its response, or there may be that they're concerned with some of the council's core processes that we really need to avoid neglecting if we can, if that's possible. You'll see from that table that they mostly pick up on some of the council's core processes, in fact, and we've got a number of attendees on the committee today who've indicated they may be able to provide a bit of more of a detail really than you've got in the report in terms of how those actions have sat against the other priorities that those services have had in supporting the response to the pandemic. Just before I come back to that, though, I will just flag there's one item in the appendix there in the adult social care and health section, which relates to self-funders and the development of the Mosaic system to help manage services for that particular cohort of service users. I raise this because there is some degree of link back to the Ombudsman report that we had on the agenda earlier that Ainsley MacDonald spoke to. That case, you'll recall, involved an element of self-funding in that. Ainsley was unable to remain on the call for to say any more about that particular recommendation, but she got other engagements that she had to go to. But I did discuss it with her yesterday, and she did confirm that progress with that action has indeed been delayed by the department's response to the pandemic. But she states that the action still does stand as something that needs to be done. But there are a number of developments with the Mosaic system that need to be made, and some of those have really just been given higher priority because they're a bit more directly related to the direct pandemic response, but it's still intended to get to that one later in the year. So I'll stop there, Chairman, and see if you want to.
So do you want to introduce the individuals on call then?
Well, I know Nigel was one, unfortunately, so he's off with his teeth. But I think he sent an update through, didn't he? Which again, I could just. Do you want me to just summarise?
Yeah, very quickly.
Yeah. So part of it was around commissioning. I think there are a number of issues around commissioning, and Nigel again quite rightly points out that the team have been really occupied with the response around the PPE and procuring, purchasing and distributing PPE on behalf of the County Council and for the Local Resilience Forum. So that's been a key element that I think has delayed progress across all fronts, and particularly with these actions in this report. But nonetheless, commissioning is something I think is reflected in the response in the papers that is going to feature as part of the council's cross-cutting transformation programme that's currently being redeveloped and worked up. So there'll be, I think, that will be a key strand of that new programme, and it will be an opportunity to pick up these actions and more besides, I'm sure, in relation to that.
Yeah.
And then the other one from Nigel, I think, was around training around the financial system and forecasting and what have you. And again, staff in the finance team preoccupied with the immediate response to the pandemic. But that's not to say that individual bits of training and advice have not been given. That certainly has been done where a bit more of an ad hoc rather than a scheduled basis. But again, Nigel recognises the importance of that and is keen to get back to that as soon as he can with the team and to get that put in place. I see Marge has got hand up. Did you want to come in, Marge, from your
perspective?
perspective?
Just to build on the bit about training. So I think it's worth I don't know, members might not know this, and I was staggered when I found out the number here. So what we did at the start of the pandemic, we had to redeploy staff to frontline service areas because we didn't have enough staff. We had to monitor our staff on a daily basis to check we literally had enough people to go out and deliver every single service. So we couldn't have people doing non-essential training. But what we did was we realigned all our training to redeploy people to the front line. We delivered 37,000 units of training to get people out there to do frontline service delivery. 37,000, over 37,000. Things like infection control, social care, 3,500 units of face-to-face training. So we realigned our training resources to deliver so we could meet the needs of the pandemic. What we need to do now is to go back to doing those other more routine things that we need to review, like refresher training for health and safety. And I would just reiterate the point about colleagues in health and safety, PPE, procurement, etc. We're all working on PPE. So I think it's and dealing with the pandemic. So I think this really reflects the response to the pandemic. What we need to do now, I think, is Rob's point, is get back to, hopefully, I dare say it, BAU.
Yeah, and I mean, from my response to the chair, we had a pre-agenda meeting a month ago, and we pointed out at the pre-agenda meeting we need to get back to some form of normality as soon as we possibly can, and this paper is in response to that, to make you aware that normality needs to return. How quickly it needs to return is how long is a piece of string, but we need to be working towards it. And so from the chair, I'm just reassuring you that that is something that we are keen to do, and is happening. Okay, Kate.
So just a very quick one. Just to say thank you. The two issues I was going to raise, which was around tendering, contracting, commissioning, and Mosaic, have both been reassured that they're both part of the cross-cutting agenda. So that's really helpful. So thank you for that, because clearly I think the way we kind of tender, contract, commission, whatever you want to call it, it's going to be really important. It is now, and it's going to be into the future. So thanks.
Good. I've still got a hand up.
I think it's Nikki, is it?
Brooks, I think, yeah.
Yeah. It's just again, to reiterate, we need to remain a fleet of foot, and that has to come through from the politicians as well as the members. So I'm going to move then straight on to.
Sorry, Councillor Brooks.
We've got Nikki.
Sorry, Nikki. Sorry, I missed you. I apologise.
That's fine. Don't worry. I'm trying to be quick. I think it's probably been kind of cleared up, but on in the appendix 1, on the 1, 2, 3, 4th item down about county enterprise foods, I just wondered why some spending was transferred, as it says in the report, but not all. I just wondered if we could have a bit more information on that.
Rob?
Yeah, I think I would need to follow that one up, actually, Councillor Brooks, to see what the detail is behind that. So I'll do that and get a response back to you.
Thank you very much, Rob. Thank you.
Thank you. To all of us, please, Rob.
Yes, everybody. Yeah, certainly.
Okay. Anybody else? No, that's it then. So the recommendation then is on page 6. Everybody agree the recommendation? Excellent paper, by the way, Rob. Well done.
Thank you. Thanks.
Okay. So thank you very much. So we'll go straight then on the external audit, the audit letter. Where are you, John?
Thanks very much, Chair.
Yeah, so I mean, just to say, no real sort of new news in this annual audit letter. As I would have said to you last year, we find ourselves in this strange place where auditing standards require us to report everything to you before I sign the opinion, and the specific legislation we work under also requires us to produce an annual audit letter after I signed the opinion. So here it is, and it's very much a summary of the audit findings report that you considered beforehand. So nothing new in it really. Just to confirm it, it does say that we haven't yet given the certificate because we haven't completed the work we have to do on the whole of government accounts return. I'm actually expecting to be signing that off this afternoon. So that will be the sort of final throes of the 1920 audit. And then just the other thing that I need to mention is at the back of it, you'll see the agreed additional fees for the 1920 year, most of which as we sort of flagged in advance and have already talked to you about. I think last time we spoke about fees, we were saying that there was likely to be an additional fee in relation to the impact of COVID as well. That is now specified in there and was agreed with Nigel before we put this document together. And basically, the impact of remote working and COVID has actually led us to take somewhere between sort of 30 to 40% longer across all of our audits. But what we have done is sort to just pass a proportion of that additional cost onto our clients. So we've basically gone for around a 15% increase in fees because of COVID and absorbed the rest of that ourselves. So I think that's probably all I need to say about this this report. I remember the heady days when the predecessor of the annual audit letter, that was called the management letter, used to be a grand document which we did indeed used to present to full council meetings. So in some ways the circle is turning.
Thank you very much, John, and thank you on behalf of the committee for all the work you've put in for us, and the way that you have engaged with the committee has been extremely helpful, and it's to your credit really. So again, thanks a lot. Okay, any other comments please on the audit letter? No, we'll take those to true record then. And agree the recommendations. Yeah, seconder. Yeah, okay. Thank you very much. So we'll now move on to the work programme. Just got one thing from the chair, if I may, Marge. We just need to be looking in to the, again, thinking forward with reference to remote learning. You know, and remote council meetings and how we intend to move forward. I think it comes into the governance part of our responsibility. I don't know what your view on that is or what people's view on it is, but we just perhaps ought to look forward to doing a piece of work on that.
We're obviously doing a lot of work on that in preparation for post the 6th of May. Yeah.
The committee needs to see sight of that, doesn't it, really?
Yeah. Okay, we can bring a report back at some point. Yeah.
Okay. Any other comments from people on the work programme? So I've got one word for you all. Thank you.
2 words, Chairman.
Yeah, 2 words.
Thank you, Chairman, and looking forward to seeing Lawton Lane in Billsthorpe somewhere along the line. All the best to you and good luck to everybody.
Cheers.
Bye-bye.
Thanks very much.
Bye, everybody.
Everyone.
Bye.
You'll be as pleased as I am that as we move through March, the days are getting longer and we're starting to see a bit of spring coming through and some warmer days. And with that, it's fantastic, isn't it, to be able to get outside a little bit more and to enjoy the open air. But it's really important that as we do that, that we also keep in mind all of the measures that are in place in this very first step of the roadmap. It allows for us to meet up with one other person for recreational activities outdoors. But it's really important that even as we do that, we keep in mind all of the social distancing measures, which are so important. The reason they're important is that there is no shortcut we can take to the end of the roadmap. There is still quite a long way to travel, and during that time we need to make sure that the rates in Nottinghamshire come down further. You can play your part in that by sticking to the rules at each step of the roadmap.